What's up, guys? It's Joey. I want to talk about drums, specifically the drum sound that I get in all of my riff videos. I've been asked for 2 years now to show off how I get my drums to sound the way that they do. And I figured it's about time. I've been kind of in a groove of making videos. So I'm going to talk about how I get the drum sound that I've been using. The session that I have open right here is for one of my riffs. I called it I'm Back for some reason. I think I'd not posted a riff in a while, but this is probably my favorite riff that I've done. It's not super flashy. I think the vibe is super sick. I'm gonna play a little bit of it and then we'll talk about the drums. Yeah, this is crazy. This is back when I was using all amp sims before I had my quad. This is OG. This is the last of the OG riffs, I feel like. Yeah, man, I wish I could write stuff this good now. I love this riff so much. So first things first, in PreSonus, I have Contact loaded up with GGD Modern and Massive. This is my favorite drum library I've ever used. Now, a couple of things are changed from the stock kit, okay? First things first, Vinnie Paul snare. Super important. That snare is a good 50% of the drums. The kick, pretty sure is the recording custom. Yep, that's the only change from how it loads up stock as far as what actual drums are getting played. Now, another important thing. Before anything, we got to change some of the levels in here in the individual sections of GGD. I will flip through them so that you can copy them if you want, and then we'll talk about them. These are the toms and the cymbals. Now, this is the trick that I always use. And whether I'm tracking live drums and I'm layering samples or I'm just using GGD, if you look at this room far track right here, everything is muted. Well, not muted, but brought way down except for the snare. So this far room track ends up being mostly just snare. The close room is a little bit of a blend of everything. There's not a lot of cymbals in it. And same thing with the mono. I'm not putting a lot of cymbals in any of these room tracks. And that's really important for getting the roomy sound of the drums that I like to use a lot. No turbo on anything. So I'm going to just solo out how these sound. Actually, let me take all my plugins off really quick. All right, so I'm going to solo out just how the far room sounds by itself. It's just snare. All right, now here's the near room. All right, so that's a little bit of everything. The mono room. It's honestly more kick than anything. So that is how I set the tracks up. They're all routed out to their own tracks. I've got kick sum, kick sub, snare top, bottom, tom 1 through 3, hi-hat, ride. I have the overheads split out, which I don't really need to do, but I'm doing it anyway. And then all of those room tracks on a separate channel. And those are all getting routed into 5 buses: a kick bus, a snare bus, a tom bus, an overhead bus, and a room bus. So I guess we should start with the overheads. Really simple. There is nothing on the actual tracks themselves. Now, because of the way that I have those levels set up, it is mostly cymbals. And I've got a little bit of compression using the V comp here. And you can see it's kind of just tickling when the snare and the kick hit, right? Now, I'm doing a healthy bit of roll off right here. So I'm getting rid of like all of that low kind of room sound. It's rolled off at 486 hertz, which is higher than I feel like I normally go when I'm starting from scratch. So these are our overheads. Pretty easy. Let's bring in the kick drum. All right, now we're going to be doing a decent little bit of carving out of this kick drum. This is the EQ we're rocking. Adding a lot of slap and taking out some of that muddy noise. I'll turn the overheads off so we can just listen to this. It's really bright and spanky. And also there is a low roll off on this kick drum. I remember I watched a YouTube video. I'll see if I can find it and link it below, but it was talking about like, it was somebody, it wasn't anyone from Periphery. It wasn't like Nolly or anything, but they were just dialing in a drum mix, and I thought it sounded incredible. And they did this on the kick drum. And actually a lot of the techniques that I've used in this, because this has been my template for the last 2 years, were taken from that video. I'll try to link it below, but they low cut the kick drum, and I thought that was interesting, and it actually did give me a little bit more headroom in my drum bus. So this is the EQ, some compression, and it's getting pretty spanked, relatively fast release, slower attack, but still enough to kind of grab it. And virtual tape machine. This thing makes a huge difference turned on and off. Like all of that low end bloom comes from that. And it sounds sick. Let's jump over to the snare. So this is the Vinnie Paul snare by itself. So we're gonna start out with some EQ, and that looks like this. So there's a little bit of ring here. The Vinnie Paul snare does have a lot of ring to it, and if you want to go in and pull a little bit more of it out than I did, you absolutely can. I like a little bit of ring in the snare drum. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Good boost on the fundamental. And we're scooping out some 500. Sounds like this. It's like that kind of muffled sound. Taking that out. And then there's a high shelf at like 2500 that boosts 4.5 dB. And I'm pulling out a little bit of the like spanky, like sharp 3K, 4K-ish sound. So that's the EQ we're starting with. Then it's going into virtual mix rack, which is interesting. This is not my chain anymore. I'm clipping it into virtual channel, which is kind of evening out a little bit of the transients, making the snare drum a lot less pokey and a little bit more focused. The drive knob here is really good. It's super subtle, but it's really good for like kind of smoothing out pokey stuff. That makes sense. We're going into the API EQ. It's putting back in some of that 3K that I cut out and doing a little bit more low end. And then it's getting smacked by the FG401. Slow attack, fast release, mix all the way up, 4:1 ratio, and a little bit of shimmer on revival. So if I take all of this out, sounds like a drum. That sounds like a slap, right? That's next. And now we've got Fab Filter Saturn. I love this plugin. I really want to get Saturn 2. Alas, I have not. This is doing a lot for the top end of the snare drum. I've got a 2.5 decibel boost right here. Adding a little bit of drive to the mid-range and like the low end of the drum. But up here, I'm doing a little bit more. Saturn is actually a really good tool for live drums. If you want to take cymbal bleed out of your drum, you can roll this dynamics knob back and really, or turn it up, and really get some spank or openness. You can get sustain, you can get punch, a lot out of just this dynamics knob. then this bottom band down here underneath 120 is muted. So it's kind of just acting like another low cut. And now we've got one more EQ on the end. And that's just doing another low cut and really boosting this fundamental so that it pokes through the mix. Just makes the snare drum sound fatter. Without this, still sounds good, just doesn't sound as fat. That is snare drum. Let's see if I can find a spot for toms. Toms, I'm not doing a lot because the toms in GGD sound really good. Literally just using Saturn again to pull a little bit of mids out. And I'm not driving the top. Normally I'll do something like that. Maybe even boost these a little bit. Just make them a little spankier. I'm going to leave that. Okay, now room mics. This is where it gets fun. For the room mics, over here on the actual individual channel, I've got an EQ and a compressor. We'll start with the near room because that one's kind of the overall of the kit. It is a lot of mid-range. Pretty quiet, but I'm rolling off everything below like 200. And I've got a lot of 1.5 getting boosted with a high shelf that's cutting 5 decibels at 9K. So this is kind of like the mid-range of my kit, right? Because I'm saving the top end open stuff for the far room, which is just a snare. That is running into the Kieve. I don't know how to pronounce it, but these plugins are awesome. Into the distressor plugin. And that's doing this. It's actually not hitting as much as I normally do. Only on the big hits. Might turn it up a little bit going in. But it's smashing it. Fastest attack, fastest release. 6-to-1 ratio, so it's not doing that much, but it's grabbing all of those transients and squashing them. And the far room, which is just a snare like we said, kind of has the opposite of that. So boosting a lot of top end, right? Everything above 2.5K is getting boosted by 6 dB. Again, we're pulling out the same kind of frequencies we pulled out on the actual snare track, the harsh sounding stuff, and we're scooping out a lot of low mids. So once I turn this on, right, it kind of focuses the sound a little more and makes it way more splatty because we've already got all of the impact from the actual track itself. And we're doing the exact same settings on the distressor. And it's getting smashed. Like we're hitting red. It's kind of what you want. Again, fast attack, super fast release. So we're smashing this far room. And now all of that is getting run into this bus where it's getting compressed again by the CLA 76. And it's kind of just grabbing those extra hits. And another EQ. That's kind of just pulling out a little bit of 201. I guess it's just a resonant frequency in the library that I didn't like. Yeah, as far as the mono room, not really doing much. I don't have anything on it. Kind of just blended to taste. So that is the kit right now. Now, I have 3 sends set up, and these 3 sends are a drum reverb, a parallel compression drum bus, and a drum dirt send. So the reverb is only on the snare, the drums, and the room tracks. So the room tracks are getting run to the reverb too, just to kind of make them extra big. I've got true verb here, and it's set to the drum room preset with the direct turned off. So you can see the send levels. I'm sending a lot more of the snare than I am the tom and the room track. And it kind of just gives me a little bit extra low-end smearing, I guess, is a good way to put it. So that's my drum reverb. I got my drum parallel, which is an 1176. And that is, once again, getting the heck smashed out of it. 8-to-1 ratio. kind of fast attack, not really, but really fast release. And I'm getting like 10 dB of compression on my snare hits, right? Everything's pretty much getting sent to it at the same level, and the needle is just constantly bouncing. And drum dirt. Again, everything's getting sent to this dirt track. The overheads are getting sent a little bit less, and I've got decapitator. And it's kind of just making everything a little bit more hairy. Not as much overheads or rooms with this one. Really just want to focus on the punch of those drums. So now all of these tracks come to this drum bus right here. And once again, I've got the Kive Extressor and slowest attack, fastest release, a 6-to-1 ratio, and let's see how much gain reduction I'm getting. So on the snare hits, I'm almost to the red. I don't know exactly how many dB that is. 9 dB of reduction. But because it's the slowest attack, all of that snare transient's getting through, all of the kick transient's getting through, and it's just clamping down on everything else after it. And that's getting run into NLS channel, which is very strange. I definitely don't do this anymore. I do really like the mic setting for the NLS channel. It makes the low end really pop out. And that's just kind of barely hitting red. And that is literally my drum sound. That's it. It's GGD Modern and Massive, tweaked a little bit. Couple of plugins. This is kind of an older riff, and I have changed some things a little bit since this, but this was the template for all of my riffs for like all of 2023, which was when I feel like I was posting stuff that was cool. If you have GGD Modern and Massive, which I know a lot of you guys do because you talk to me about it a lot, try this out. I would really recommend messing around with the room levels of certain things, like really boosting your snare room. Sometimes I don't even use the far room, I use the close room if I don't want the snare to be as like doosh. If I want it to sound a little tighter, a little smaller, I'll bump it in the close room track. If you want the drums to sound like dirtier and indier and grosser, boost your shells in the mono room track. I think the way that the software is laid out and the way that a lot of drum libraries are coming out now where you do have control over room mics and overheads and sends, and there's different sets of room mics. It is pretty sweet. And if you tweak those, you can come up with a lot of really cool sounds that are different from just like your default open it up, because it's very rare that I find something that opens up and sounds incredible and can fit into a mix. So that's my drum sound. Go wild. If you guys do anything cool, have any cool little tricks, let me know. I want to go over some live drums that I've tracked recently and talk about how I process those, because that's way more in depth. So yeah, these are my drums. These are my sounds. Thanks for watching.